Be nice to have that.
I can shut that clock off.
Well, maybe we get another. No, it's good. It's cool.
Oh.
Oh, no, we like noises. We like good noises.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, we can go now.
what brought you and your family to the Entiat Valley?
I was born here.
Yeah, but your family.
My father moved here in 1928. They came out from Illinois. My grandfather had farms, and that was the Depression areas, and they were losing everything. They came out to work in the apples, find work, and then they went back in 29. They bought the rest of the family out, and they settled in Entiat. I was born in 42, so that was before I was born.
So how did you and your family make a living over the years?
My father was an orchardist. My grandfather was an orchardist. One time they had over 250 acres in the Entiat area, in the old town, and that's basically it for the family.
And your dad believed that he needed to improve in his own product, so that's the reason why you're not an orchardist, you are.
Right. I didn't want to be an orchardist, but I ended up by default picking up about 60 acres, which I managed to sell all of it, about 12 or 15 for my mother, and then I managed it through here for years. And my son grew up, went to Entiat High School and WSU, and he didn't want to be an orchardist. He learned too, changing water before school and after practice. He didn't like that.
So then how did you make your living?
I was a school teacher. Actually, my history is that I graduated from Entiat in 1960, Entiat High School, went to Eastern Washington. Well, actually, I went to Seattle Pacific on a basketball scholarship, and I played one quarter over there with Seattle Pacific. I made the varsity, but I was like down towards the bottom. Eastern called and offered me a football scholarship, so I transferred to Eastern, and I graduated in '64 from Eastern with a major in science and health, PE, and recreation, and ROTC, so I went into the service from the summer of '64 to the end of '66. I was an artillery officer at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I was scheduled to go to Vietnam, but my dad sent me a contract from Entiat High School because the basketball coach had left for unknown reasons, so that I was one of the last officers to get out of the U.S. Army in 1966. I had to have a 2-star general sign my release, so he did. So.
And then you came back to Entiat?
I came back as a teacher, and the basketball position was open, and PE was open, and so I had the credentials, so that's what I started in high school, secondary.
What is one story from your coaching experience in basketball that gives you the most pleasure?
Having a winning season with kids that had never had a lot of success. I've went to state, we've won district, we've won the league, but one team of very overachiever kids that really nobody gave them a chance. And at that time we had a person named Nick Babcock who had Nick's picks in the papers, and he picked us not to win a game, and we actually won 11 games with those kids. That's the best I've ever done, I think, because they worked hard.
Did you have one particular basketball player that stood out? He didn't have to be the star, but...
Yeah. I've had a lot of kids. I go clear back to 1967, and over the years of 40 years, in which I head coach basketball 21, I have a lot of kids, but probably the one was a kid, he was 5'9". He probably was a $120, 120 pounds if he was lucky. He came to me and he wanted to turn out. He never played basketball. He was a wrestler. And this kid, all he wanted to do was, when I told him to get the ball, he went in, and if he could last 2 minutes without fouling out, to start with, is great. By the end of the year, he was one of the kids I could rely on defense. He never was a scorer, but he knew defense. I never had a wrestler, and that was a whole different mentality.
Yes, it is. That's true.
When you lived here as a youngster, who were your neighbors that you remember?
Judge Dunn, Justice of the Peace Julius Dunn, was one of our closest neighbors. We lived right on the west end of the football field. Actually, my first 4 years, I lived on the north end of the elementary building. There was 2 houses here, my grandfather's and my dad's. They've both since been moved or destroyed. And then we moved over to that house. In 1958, we moved to the house just below us here. That's where I graduated from high school. This house was built in 1972, so my other neighbors around there have all been deceased. Son Dunn, the Baxter family. Unfortunately, most of them are passed away, even the young ones. So then the next neighbors were quite a ways away. We had Alman Newt Tall, who were pioneers of the city, and after that it kind of scattered out.
What did you do for entertainment or organizations?
Rode horses, belonged to the Boy Scouts, and did a lot of camping. We didn't have TV until I started my junior year in high school. So my uncle was the mayor, my other uncle was the fire chief, and I had another uncle who had the TV. We had a TV station, sold TVs, radios, entertainment centers and stuff, and so we put up the towers. I helped on Keystone Point in 1958 summer.
I can remember the first time I saw the letters TV. And I was at a friend's house and he had it on his radio and it said TV, and I said, "What is a TV?" That's he's fine. It's okay. That's good. That's good noise.
He thinks the door. He doesn't. He's not an indoor cat, but he thinks the door. He should be it probably. Yeah. You know, going to Entiat High School once a month was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Dusty's was a hangout.
Yeah.
Dusty's In and Out was way out of town. It was surrounded by orchards. You had to go another half mile to get into the town. And then outside, the other one was Vic's Drive-In and D&D Roller were further out of town. And now they're surrounded by businesses and stuff. People don't realize what it was like then.
Mm-hmm. Judy and I lived at Vic's. I mean, I'm serious. Physically lived at Vic's.
So you know what Vic's Burgers, Vic's Super Burgers are and stuff, just like Dusty Burgers and stuff. Vic's had the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did too.
When our first year of marriage was in their trailer court.
Oh, you actually lived back there.
Yeah.
There was a trailer court. Yeah, behind it. Yeah.
We lived in the trailer court.
I remember there's a trailer court back there, and then D&D was really close to you guys.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that was the year I taught at Wenatchee High School.
What year was that?
1965.
Yep, 1965.
Because Leslie taught at Wenatchee High School in 1963 before we got married.
I did my student teaching in 62. We kind of circled around each other.
Yeah, she did hers at Ballard, and she went to Seattle Pacific, so the Ballards were. And she did Queen Anne Junior High and Elementary.
Well, what events or hardships do you remember from the past in the Entiat area?
There's been a lot. The town really suffered. When it went away, we had about a 6-7 block Main Street area like most small towns. It was just parallel both sides, but we had a bank, 3 restaurants, 3 taverns, 2 grocery stores, a drive-in restaurant, drugstore, big post office, big hardware store. We even had a saddle shop growing up. But then when the POD came in and bought everybody out, they didn't replan the city, so they struggled. And I remember my father's comment was that we had a lot of orchards, but there wasn't a lot of things happening. So a lot of my friends moved away. Most of the kids in high school, my class, 29 people, graduated in 1960. And right after that, most of them had moved. The day after we graduated, they just tried to destroy the high school because it was not good. At a big community gathering, 10-ton wrecking ball, hit it for about an hour. They kept hitting that building, and all they could do was chip off some chips. So they'd blow it up the next day. We didn't have a lot of money. My dad had had over 200 and some acres of apples and pears and peaches and cherries, but as far as actual cash, we didn't have much. So our things were always riding bikes, riding horses. We had a lot of horses. Milk cows, churn butter, did all the stuff that you hear people always say they do, but that's really true.
So when you went to put food on your table, some of it was preserved food, some was grown in the garden?
Most of it was grown in the garden or preserved because my mom canned everything. And from, you name it, asparagus, and of course peaches and cherries and apricots were always canned. Made apple butter like crazy.
Did you do hunting?
Yes. Around here the big thing was hunting, fishing, and in the winter we did a lot of skiing. we actually managed the Entiat Valley Ski Hill for 3 years. We went up every Saturday and Sunday and Wednesday night and started the motors and got it going and got the food stuff going.
And you were here during the ice skating.
Yes.
Ice skating.
When I was young, we had a hockey team in Entiat. Manson had one, Cashmere, Leavenworth. It was the older people, but we all skated a lot. Well, she got in. She figured out a way. That's okay. I'll take her out.
Did you help put your class number on Numeral Mountain?
Yeah, myself, one other guy, and 5 girls. Numer Mountains, for alumni of Entiat, has really been a big thing. It's been in Look magazine. It's been in National Geographic twice. Evening magazine was coming over this spring, but the class of 212, we couldn't tell them when they're putting their number up. History, the way it works is seniors get out a week early, and in history, you had your number painted before your graduation date. So at the night of graduation, everybody could see your number on the hill. And when I graduated in the years before, you had 24 hours to black out the senior number. The junior class did. So you had your number painted, and they had 24 hours after that if they could go up and paint it out. So nobody ever really did, except I remember the class of 59. We hung a black sheet over their number down by ropes, and that was an exciting day at school the next day when they broke in to get their revenge. Then we went up and cut the ropes, and the sheet fell down. So yeah, we painted our number. 5 girls helped carry up the paint. One other kid went up, but he wouldn't get on the rope, so I actually painted the whole number. And over the years, there's 2 people, Donnie Olin and Les Julian, and I have painted about 6 or 7 of them over. We were going to do more, but age kind of caught up with us.
How about the areas around the old town of Entiat, the Upper Valley, the Ardenbohr, Winesap going the other way?
Yeah, I remember, well, we had Winesap and we had Wagnersburg. And we had large families and a lot of people. The Van Winkle orchards were down by Wagnersburg, and the Harris orchards were up by Winesap. And they had a lot of orchard then. It's no longer there because the water came up. If you lived here, I've got pictures of us putting stakes in the ground every day when they started raising the lake. But the water did not move east when it came up. It came up 90 feet and all moved west because they had the banks over there. We didn't. So the water all moved west. That's why this is all gone. Yeah, but I remember we had kids in my class from both. The Eisenhowers were from Wagnerburg and the Wares were from Winesap. And Winesap at one time had a post office and a grocery store. So my Aunt Dorothy had a lot of pictures of the Winesap area.
Could you tell us a story from your past or describe somebody you remember? Names I've heard are like Albert Jones.
Yeah, Albert Jones, he lived at the top of Town Hill. When I was in school, Town Hill went clear down past into the water where the irrigation district pump house is. That was where the Willie Rest food store was. And so you could ride all the way down. And Albert Jones was a white-haired, bearded man that sat on his deal, and he talked to everybody that came by. Everybody called him Abby Dabby. I do not know how he got the name of Abby Dabby. He was related to Wayne Oatmeal and a few other people in town. And Wayne was a horse guy, raced horses. There's a lot of old timers. I could list a whole bunch. Julius Dunn, Harold Faulkner, Art Carter. All those are considered old timers when I was young. Unfortunately, they're all gone.
How about, let's see, I have down on my list John Brown.
John Brown, the Rossing family lived in Gray's Canyon. That's 16 miles up the river. And Larry Rossing, they had 6 kids, and Larry was in my class. And I started going with my wife, who was a senior and graduated, when I started going with her to SBU. But John Brown would always come down to Rossing's for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I have a lot of stories on John Brown. I got to see him a lot, walking with his horse. I could tell you some stories. He ran cattle from Crum Canyon clear up to Preston Creek, Brennigan Creek. He was quite an old timer. He always liked to say, "That right?" And he'd give that little hee-hee laugh. we would go up and do his hay. He'd cut it with the horses. He had a horse-drawn sickle and he had a horse-drawn wagon. And when the hay got dried, the Rossing boys would go up and I would go up and we would load his hay off the field on his wagon, put it in his barn. And at the end of the day, he gave us each a silver dollar, a Morgan silver dollar, and back in the 1880 silver dollar. And that started me actually collecting coins. And I have a pretty extensive coin collection now. But I remember him, I mean, there's a lot of stories in John that we know.
What part of Entiat's past that no longer exists do you miss the most?
Oh, when I was young, everybody square danced. So on Sundays, evenings, and sometimes Fridays with no games to school, everybody in the community, including young kids, would be there to square dance or do something because there wasn't much else to do in the winter, especially except ice skate. We had a huge ice skating pond by Tex and M's drive-in restaurant and store, but the rest of the time you spent in high school or this gym or stuff. So we had a lot of get-togethers. We had a lot of ice skating parties, and of course a lot of sledding parties. The big thing was to go up Mills Canyon, and we could go up 3 miles and then ride sleds for over 3 miles down, which you could ride a sled for a long time. Kurt Jacobson, another kid, was riding 4 on a sled. It wrecked. He lost his spleen. The other kid was in hospital a long time, and that was the end of that for a while.
Did your family have a barn?
Yes, very large barn. We had cows. We milked cows. I churned the butter. Hated that because you had to clean it up afterwards, the churn. We had pigs, we had horses. In our barn we filled with hay like everybody else, summer and fall, and then use it in the winter. Stories about the barn is my dad would get wild cows because he'd get them really cheap, nobody could milk. So then we had a special little deal. We'd slide it up the cow and push them against the side of the pen, and then we could, when they get done quicken and get them quiet down, we start milking. Pretty soon they just, that was not a big deal.
How have tools, equipment, vehicles changed?
When I was in school, nobody had cars. There was more kids riding horses to school. We used to have where Olins lived, the Lockwoods lived there, and in those trees was a horse pen behind the tennis courts. There's only 2 when I went to school. Actually, they were made when I was going to school. And cars rolled. Hand labor in the orchards was fantastic. You sprayed by hand. You had hoses you drug around. I remember spraying when I was little, not in junior high, and you'd hook onto this one, spray a while, then unhook, shut it off, and go to the next one. We had a spray line going through the orchard, drug hoses. We picked apple boxes. So a bin is 25 boxes, so you'd have to unload, stack, and I made boxes forever. And then put them out in the orchard. When they fill them, stack them up, take them to the warehouse. My dad would drive the Jeep down in the morning. I'd go stack them 7 high, truck them up on the platform. My mom would come and take me to school before I could drive. That's what I did every morning, seemed like.
If you were to just be asked, and I'm going to ask you, what do you appreciate about the Entiat Valley?
The people. I've been most of the places in the world. We've several times in Mexico, Hawaii, and around, and it's good to come back. They're friendly. They get out and do stuff. They don't sit back and complain. We always have a few, but most of them are very active. We probably have the best volunteers of people in this area I've ever seen, and I get this from a lot of meetings I go to. I go to meetings all over the state, so they all want to hear about Entiat. What's going on? How do you get this?
Okay, do you have anything that you would like to say that we didn't ask you?
Oh, I don't know. I've lived here all my life, except for the 4 years I went to college. But I was here summers and a lot of weekends in the apple season, and the 2.5 years we were in the service. So, I grew up here. There's a lot of stories, a lot of friends. There's about everything you can do here. You can ski, it's close. You can water ski. You can hunt. You can fish. And you can just sit down and do nothing. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem something I'm doing here lately.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies.